Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Watches and Style channel. This is your host, Young Brando, back with you with another live stream where we're going to talk watches, where we're going to talk about the timed auction that the good folks at Ineichen Zürich have put together for us. The theme is Dial Decadence. I guess it's really a fancy way of saying that they have a lot of patinated dials, a lot of weathered watch faces, of course, featuring a bunch of vintage and neo-vintage Rolex. So we're going to take a look at their offerings. This is an auction. This is a timed auction that started a few days back, I think on July 25th. And as I mentioned, the majority of watches are neo-vintage pieces, honestly, like from the late 20th century, so to speak, the 90s, early 2000s. There's some earlier pieces, some very new pieces, in fact, which I might just start with, just to point out the ridiculousness that goes into the allocation of some of these pieces. These mini Royal Oaks that just came out a couple of months ago. And imagine someone got an allocation for all three of them, basically, and put them up for sale immediately. Turned around to sell them. This is what happens, right? This is what happens when you sell your watches to people who are just willing to spend any amount of money with you without really being interested in any or many of your watches at all. Obviously, whatever you allocate them, they take it and they end up turning around and selling most of it on the secondary markets, which, of course, over time really takes away from the brand equity. But people who are in the business of making a quick buck, which is unfortunately the kind of people that these luxury brands, these watch brands, luxury brands, having become luxury brands, started hiring. You will see a lot of the sales associates who will deal with you in Rolex boutiques, in AP boutiques, AP houses, and other boutiques dedicated to some of these quote-unquote distinguished Swiss watchmakers, and even more humble joints that have the background of being jewelers owned by families. These days, most of the sales associates they have come into this having sold perfume, having sold cosmetics, having sold handbags, having sold just about anything but watches. So the kind of customers they cater to, they attract, are obviously going to be mostly not watch people, just people who are marginally interested in watches because they are attractive these days, because they do still offer, at least when it comes to certain models of certain brands, some way of turning in a quick profit. But that's another issue altogether. So let's start with a few things that I posted on Instagram. I think my Instagram feed lately has become the Serena Williams fan club. I am, in fact, refraining from posting more. But a lot of the content there has been, of course, very much infected by my recent visit to the AP house here in Los Angeles, and also some of the watches that have been worn around in Paris for the Olympics, but also just in the summer by some interesting people. So let's take a quick look. This is actually one of the pieces in the modern catalog that I really like from AP. Of course, the chronographs, much like many other complicated versions of the Royal Oak, have grown in time. The case sizes have been bloated up to 41, even though the reduced size cases for the chronographs as well have been now expanded further as a line. But this is basically your standard Royal Oak Southwinding chronograph with a very subtle green dial that was introduced on the 50th anniversary, so about, well, a little longer than 2 years ago. The reference number is 26-40 in stainless steel, of course, and it has really a very low-key appearance for quote-unquote a colored dial, because until you hit the light at a certain angle, and mostly natural light, sunlight, this dial largely registers, as you can see here, as completely black. The movement is a very modern one, caliber 4401, column wheel, vertical clutch, with the added flyback functionality as well, which I show earlier in that video. Let's see, we'll hit a second, but this is a good way of taking a look at the green dial. Yeah, this is the flyback function at work. Another personal favorite, I guess, this is also something that is pretty much decided by my own wrist size as well. I'm tall, I'm not really a big guy, but I have a certain physical presence. That being said, I have very puny wrists, very small wrists. Don't let the hairy appearance fool you. They're actually very thin. So the 37 millimeter version of the Royal Oak in current time is probably the better fit vis-a-vis the 41. I still think the Jumbo looks basically the best on everyone. That's just a small rule of thumb I have. You don't question Jarajanta's original design genius. I kind of like the way, as much as I love the initials logo of AP, I kind of like the way that they have taken this minimalist approach to design, especially with this series, where they have just your classic indices doubled at 12 and the brand signature right below without another logo. I think it really fits this particular version, especially because it has that monochromatic appearance with the silver dial. I'm still a fan of the, of course, classic midnight blue and the ice blue they have introduced for this, but the gray actually doesn't look bad at all. This is the reference 15550 ST with the gray Grand Tapisserie dial. They have a lighter shade of gray, basically, which they call silver, which does have that opaline sheen to it, to be honest. So it does look white as well for the most part. not like polar white, I guess, like your Explorer 2, but more like a classic silver dial that is somewhat toned down by that pantograph carved waffle design of the dial. You guys know that I'm a huge fan of the Spurs, so I have been kind of following their preparations for the Premier League. Ange Postecoglou, big Ange, I'm a huge fan of him. Previously also of his work at Celtic as well. He's a big fan of IWC, seemingly. He wears Portuguesa. I think it's a good choice for him. He's a big guy, and Portuguesa has been traditionally the oversized dress watch for IWC and the away kit especially, but also different versions of the Spurs jerseys have blue accents, so the blue dial is not such a bad choice. This is a model that is currently discontinued, but since this is very much a mainstay for IWC's catalog, you do have a version of it that is actually not half bad, presented on a matching stainless steel bracelet. I don't know. I still see the Portuguesa as a dress watch, so I like this older reference, which is IW 500 710 500710 with a date window at 6 o'clock, seconds on the subdial at 9, and the 7-day power reserve on display at 3 o'clock on a subdial as well. I think the watch looks very handsome on a leather strap. Has a very different appearance on a matching stainless steel strap. I'm sure it can be easily changed out, but that's what you have as an option with a blue dial in the current catalog, and that's a reference IW 501704. Pardon me, but it does look, both quite subtle, but also very proper on a big man like Ange Postecoglou. So I think Portuguesa, for that reason, is a great choice for the geezers. Dr. Bob's Nightmare, nice to see you. And Ryan Joffrey, nice to see you as well. What's going on? Enough dungeon. Yeah, guys, by all means, you can discuss whatever you want in the chat, but I have no clue about what is going on other channels. I'm not really interested either. So don't expect me, at least, to comment on it. The other great sighting that I had, I was really happy with this. I saw it on the Florentine jeweler Carolina Bucci's own Instagram page. She's apparently on a summer trip to the Greek island of Hydra with her boys, and she was wearing a Royal Oak, which is her own design. This is like a limited edition 300-piece run of the 77-350, which is the 34-millimeter version of the black ceramic Royal Oak, with a dial which, much like the blackened, murdered out appearance of the watch, has an urban inspiration. She describes it quite like the appearance of a rainbow, where you see these different colors on oil floating in a puddle in the city. And of course, the repeating pattern very much replicates or harkens back to that pantograph carved waffle design, the tapisserie, so to speak. So this is very much something I appreciated. Carolina Bucci wearing her own design. If you want to look for anything that I'm displaying now, feel free to jump on my Instagram page, follow me. If you drop some likes to the posts and even write some comments, that would be much appreciated. I really, really love you guys for being here, for your presence. I don't want to expect anything more, but you know, Instagram has been quite tough recently. I don't receive much exposure at all. So if you can push me with some likes and comments, and even with sharing posts, that would be fantastic. Ryan Joffrey, thank you for the super chat, 199, pure class, clothes, watches, and tranquility here. Yeah, I've been quite minimalist myself today. Bad hair day, so I'm wearing a baseball cap, a Hanley shirt, so not much to show here in terms of clothes, motivation, lifestyle, luxury. Love it, man. I love that double-breasted jacket as well. Thank you for being here. Thank you as well. Yeah, I have no intention of ruining it. I can't, look, people who have met me in person know that I can be quite dramatic as a character. It is part of my personality, but I just don't like how it proceeds on a computer screen, right? I'm a real person, probably to my detriment. So it's jarring to me that people talk a bunch of shit, on a computer screen and don't really deliver much of action, right? I think it was in Not Like Us, where Kendrick has this verse, about caption and action. What was it exactly? I'm so sorry that I forgot. I was so excited that I remembered, and I would spit out Kendrick's. Fuck a caption. I want action. That's what it was. So that's my life philosophy. The rainbow pattern is on the dial. It's not on the crystal. The crystal is the same as any other modern Royal Oak. The dial is the special design, and that is Carolina Bucci's contribution. And Carolina Bucci is, by the way, the jeweler who has transferred those skills of frosted gold finish that you see on a lot of precious metal creations of the brand nowadays. So the collaboration with Carolina Bucci from AP standpoint goes further back, but this watch that came out about 2 years ago, again, as part of the 50th anniversary of the design, was something that carried her signature in a much more obvious way. These are in the official currency of the channel, 6 shekels. Good morning from the sovereign state of Israel. Thank you for being there. Thank you for holding up the flag. Dr. Bob says, call Brando maybe if you did some bathing suit reels like Sophie's Watch World. Not sure if anyone wants to see me in a bathing suit. I was actually on the beach with my girlfriend last weekend. Yeah, people were not happy to see me. I look like a fucking gorilla. I mean, I guess, I don't know, it might attract some attention for people to laugh, and I might get some hits and clicks with that initially. Um, but I don't think that anyone would gawk at my bathing suit reels in the way that one might at some other persons. I really don't know who Sophie is and what her watch world is like, but that's yeah, more power to people, you know, who lean on their own strengths. I don't even like, you know, talking shit about people I know or don't know. You know, they do what they do best. I do what I do best, and hopefully at some point this will work for me in a better way. We were looking at a black ceramic piece. This is when I started obsessing about what Serena is wearing these days. This was for an event in Milan, actually, before she arrived in Paris for the Olympics. Of course, another black ceramic Royal Oak. This time, what I have is the Perpetual calendar Openwork. This was a model that was introduced in 2019 and marked the return or reintroduction of an open-worked perpetual calendar into the Royal Oak lineup. And of course, it kind of exhibits like some of the most important aspects of what I guess distinguishes Audemars Piguet, especially today, their material experimentation or material innovation. That's, I think, most specifically displayed with their ceramic pieces. It's not necessarily innovative at this point, right? A lot of brands make ceramic watches, but ceramic is, especially when you finish it at the level of a Royal Oak, where you basically bank on the interplay between grain brushed and polished surfaces. It takes about 5 to 6 times as much time as, say, stainless steel. So it's much more difficult and much more time consuming to work on the ceramic. What watch did I have on the beach? I had my King Turtle. I had my Seiko King Turtle. That's my favorite beach watch. It should be somewhere around here or in the back. Maybe when I take a break, I will take it out and show. But yeah, this is the 26585 CE with the Openwork dial that Serena Williams was wearing in Milan. And I actually snapped a photo today from her stories as well, where she's wearing the same watch in Paris as well. Omar Sai, who's a French actor that you may have, if you have watched any recent French movies, there's a good chance that you are somewhat familiar with Omar Sai's work. What would be a movie that you may have watched? Not sure, actually, not sure, because there are a lot of interesting French movies that he took part in, but not sure if any of them actually had any sort of success for the American market. he was an invitee to the pre-Olympics party by Pharrell. Pharrell, as you guys know, the famous rap producer and hip-hop artist himself, one half of the Neptunes, has been the head designer for Louis Vuitton for a couple of years now. So he was introducing kind of like a sporting collection in connection to the Olympics. I actually kind of liked Omar Sai's suit here. I'm not one usually who appreciates black color in suits, but I kind of like this number. It's severity, and it's very French, by the way, black suits. They are guilty of making it popular. But I like how the severity of this particular example is broken up by those mother of pearl buttons, both for the closure, but also on the sleeves as well. And he's wearing a Cartier piece, which is the Santos Skelet, or the skeletonized Santos, with a blackened ADSL blackened case, and of course an open worked dial that makes very good use of those elongated Roman numerals at the quarters as well. I kind of like the design of this watch. I think it's a little bit expensive for what it is, which is something that we were talking about in the comments. $30,000, I think, is quite a lot of money for a Santos. And again, I like the design of the dial, but this is not really an open work dial that has a lot of hand manipulation that sets it apart, to the extent that you would expect from some level of work from these brands. Of course, again, we're not talking about independent brands that nowadays sell watches at 75,000 a pop, or even at six figures. So St. James Lux or Lux is saying, thank you for breaking down the ceramic process. It's my pleasure, man. That's what sets this particular platform apart. We do talk about these things, and that's important, especially when it comes to specific kinds of finishing that a Royal Oak requires, because IWC, for example, uses nowadays ceramic or their particular alloy of ceramic quite widely. Ceratanium, I think they call it, because it's a mix of zirconium and titanium. But their case finishing is quite monotonous, which is not necessarily a bad thing, right? I think it fits the aesthetic of their pilots' chronographs, especially, quite nicely. And I have covered some of those watches on my Instagram and here on YouTube as well in the past. So feel free to kind of, scroll down on the Instagram feed if you want kind of a quick look. But just for the reference, when you look at something like this, for example, from the Royal Oak to a watch like this, forget about the lack of the bracelet. But finishing a case like this is obviously much easier compared to giving that kind of required hand finishing to a ceramic case and bracelet for an integrated design like the Royal Oak, right? So it's, I'm not necessarily saying it justifies the price tag that AP associates with their ceramic creations, right? That's not for me to say, that's not for me to decide, since they have absolutely no problem selling these pieces, especially, you know, who cares about what I think about the pricing? But it is important to keep in mind to contextualize that pricing, because it is more time consuming than the usual materials that I worked with. On the opening ceremony, Serena was wearing the new double balance wheel Openwork. We have discussed these watches a few live streams ago. This is one of the new releases. Of course, the reference 15407, the 41 millimeter open-worked version of the Royal Oak with the double balance wheel, which has the balance wheel and the balance spring doubled, installed vertically on top of each other for purposes of increased accuracy and precision, not to mention also for a decent aesthetic appreciation as well, with the open-worked balance bridge, front and back. Has just been refreshed with the introduction of 3 new models. This particular one combines the white metal case with kind of a salmon tinted open-worked inside and the chapter ring. The movement has shades of rose gold, and it is open-worked, and so does the minute track around. And this is also complemented by the use of 18 karat pink gold hexagonal bolts on the octagonal bezel, which kind of completes the aesthetic. I still prefer the black, kind of the anthracite gray version of the movements. But honestly, you know, maybe it's because I'm seeing it on Serena's wrist. This looks very appropriate. This looks very much in its place. A little more feminine, maybe a little more elegant. Although I think, again, for the style of finishing, which is started with machines but completed by hand, that sort of industrial feel is, I think, very, in my opinion, better served by that blackened open-worked movement. But this looks kind of cool as well, so I'm not gonna really object to it, especially when it's on Serena Williams's wrist. Going back to my visits at the AP house, I also tried a lot of Royal Oak Offshores. You guys know that in the recent years, I've really come around when it comes to the Royal Oak Offshore. I think I can consider myself even a fan of the design, especially taking into account its history and where they could actually go with what they had in terms of the Royal Oak as Gérard Janta's design being this very elegant and sleek watch. I think they went in the right direction. And honestly, you know, until things turned around again, until the pendulum swung the other way, the Royal Oak Offshore was one of the product lines that was keeping the brand afloat in so many ways. That being said, a lot of the offshores are, of course, way too big on my wrist. Speaking of, again, my particular wrist proportions in accordance with this watch. This is Basically, the Royal Oak Offshore of the chronograph that I was wearing earlier, the standard chronograph is called 26240. This is the 26420 CE. It's the Royal Oak Offshore chronograph in ceramic and 18 karat yellow gold, which I think is a beautiful combination, kind of their bumblebee, so to speak. I think it's beautiful with that dial, which also incorporates the yellow gold accents. Even better on this black rubber strap. It's usually presented on this alligator strap with contrast stitching, which kind of overdoes this whole combination of black and gold, I think, for this watch. But otherwise, I really like this watch. Look, I could never, especially for my own taste and for the kinds of watches, for the sizes of watches that I like wearing on my wrist, I could never justify wearing this gigantic 43 millimeter ceramic chronograph on my wrist, even if I could justify the $60,000 retail price. But it is a handsome watch. I can't deny that. This is the 26420 CE, the Bumblebee Royal Oak Offshore self-winding chronograph. This also has that flyback functionality, black ceramic and yellow gold. The straps are very easily interchangeable, by the way, and both those straps come with the watch. The alligator with gold contrast stitching, as well as the black rubber. And finally, this watch, another offshore, in fact, for me, probably the most compelling offering on that side of the catalog, the Offshore Diver. This is the reference 15720 ST with the gray dial in stainless steel. I like how across that line, the accents of the watch is depending on the dial, right? You know, the khaki green one, for example, has pink gold accents, if I'm not mistaken. The blue one has ceramic accents, again, if I recall correctly. And this gray dial version, which has that mega tapestry design on the face of the watch, this one also has gray ceramic details, especially for the screw-locked crown. Both of the crowns, in fact, both the crown for adjusting the time and the 10 o'clock crown, which operates the dive timing bezel that doubles up as the chapter ring of the watch. Again, I really like this particular piece. It's almost closing on its 20th anniversary, by the way, as a design. These pieces were introduced in 2005 exclusively for Wempe, the German watch dealer, global watch dealer really, but of German origin. At that time, they were called the Offshore Scuba, and then AP made a few more limited editions for their own boutiques and for another authorized dealer of theirs. And finally, in 2010, if I remember correctly, the Offshore Diver was integrated into the catalog. And I think, honestly, they have the best thing they have in that section. And again, I'm biased due to my wrist size. I think this is really the most wearable one for me, between the rubber strap and the slightly smaller 42 millimeter case diameter. I think this is a much more manageable size for me. If I ever had an offshore in the collection, it would probably be that. Please hit the like button. VR racing. Speaking of the cross-section of VR racing and watchmaking, our very own Josh Shapiro, who has his manufacturer, of course, right here in Southern California, in Torrance, California, has a racing simulator on the manufacturer as part of his employee retention satisfaction program. So I love that. I mean, Josh is an excellent person. St. James Luke says, I'm glad you mentioned IWC. I work for Richemont IWC Boutique, so thank you. Which one? Where, if you don't mind me asking? If it's too intrusive, don't even mention it, but I'm glad. I think IWC has great ceramic watches. You know, the finishing is much more monotone compared to how ceramic Royal Oaks are finished, but you know, we're comparing apples and oranges. It's a different style of a watch. It's also very much at a different price point as well. Yeah, Ryan, actually, this is also true. It's obviously cheaper and easier to engineer and build a relatively complex watch in 43 millimeters than 39 millimeters. That's absolutely true. Anyone who, again, knows a thing or two about history of horology would know that a lot of the technical advancements rest on what one calls very quickly miniaturization, right? When Patek became the first watch maker in 1941 to serially produce Perpetual calendar chronograph wristwatch, the mastery there was basically putting together those two complications in the form of a 36 millimeter, well, less than, in fact, smaller than 36 millimeter diameter wristwatch. Same thing when you actually think about François-Paul Jean's chronomètre résonance, right? He wasn't the first person to translate the principle of resonance into the world of horology. Of course, Breguet famously had pendulum clocks and also pocket watches, right? That had implemented that same principle of resonance. But those pocket watches, for example, were, I think, the known examples are 63 millimeters in diameter. When François-Paul Jean made that in the form of a wristwatch, he fits two distinct gear trains, two separate movements in essence, in close proximity into a 38 millimeter diameter case. That was the achievement, right? Making a grand display of resonance clock is, of course, much easier than producing that movement not only as a concept, but as a working design in a wristwatch. That's much more difficult. Oh, great. I used to have some relatives in that part of Pennsylvania. They're no longer with us, but I have been to King of Prussia, It's yeah, I'm familiar with that region. Amazing. Yeah, if I ever make it to King of Prussia, I will most certainly hit you up, man. Yeah, I love Philly. I love Philly. I have been to places like that. I had some relatives in Reading. So I'm familiar with that. Van Lux, again, with his signature humor. He says, comparing monkey balls to mosquito balls. Thank you. I should have just said that rather than going on this extended digression about the history of Patek Perpetual calendar chronographs and what it meant for François Paul to make, implement resonance in a wristwatch. I should have just said that. All right. Thank you for bearing with me. Again, if you follow me on Instagram and hit the like on some of these posts, and even drop some comments if you feel so inspired, I would be forever indebted to you. Please hit the like button as well. That always helps. For a small channel like this, it's actually incredibly important, right? The few extra likes can push the channel a little further forward in terms of the algorithm and can give us perhaps, can get a few more sets of eyeballs on the channel, a few more subscribers. I'm still far away from my 5K subscriber goal. Honestly, for the short term, maybe until next summer, that is my goal, and that will really allow me to offer you so much more and so much more frequently on this channel. So if you want to push me forward, everything you do is very much appreciated. Being there, writing in the chat, hitting the like button, super chats, super stickers, other ways of supporting the channel, which are described and linked directly in the video description. Those are all great. And sharing the link of the channel, passing forward some of the content to other collectors, other watch enthusiasts, that perhaps helps as much, if not more. If you can do it all, of course, that's quite different. And there are so many of my supporters who do that, like Ali, like Jake Brooks, like I Heart Maldives, like so many others, Bezels, I'm probably forgetting a couple more, but there are so many people who help me in more ways than I can count. So I do appreciate that. I want to start actually with lot 1. Again, we're looking at Ineichen's timed auction that is going to close on August 2nd. Great, St. James. Please do. Yeah, let's start with lot 3. That is actually an original Explorer 2. The original reference, 1655. The watch, as you perhaps know, goes by 2 different nicknames. Freccione is one, something that the Italians came up with, referring to the arrow hand for the 24 hours. And the watch is also called Steve McQueen, even though I've never seen this watch photographed on the wrist of the King of Cool. It has somehow become associated. It's a watch that was introduced in the 70s, 1971, if I'm not mistaken. And that's basically the height of Steve McQueen's popularity, his reign as the king of cool, so to speak. And I guess this was a cool watch, and somehow, again, the Italian collectors connected these two things. Otherwise, there's no compelling reason, no personal and historical reason that this watch should be called Steve McQueen, but it still is. The original reference, 1655, was marketed as a watch for cave diving, spelunking, for cave explorers. And even though it's evolved into a GMT watch with the 24-hour hands now able to be adjusted separately, initially the whole purpose of that 24-hour hands was to make the distinction between day and night, between AM and PM in an environment where you don't have natural light, right? Much like the Scott Carpenter cosmonaut, that particular version, 24-hour dial version of the Breitling Navitimer, that was modified for space. Again, another environment where you can't make that visual immediate distinction between day and night. So that's why Explorer 2 has a 24-hour hand, because you are deep inside a cave, pause, and you need that extra hand, one more pause there, to know night from day. As you know, also, there's a luminous marker for each hour as they correspond to the marks on the bezel, which is a 24-hour bezel. And as is visible from earlier promotional material, these 24-hour hands were kind of a bright red, almost a fire red originally. But one of the charms of the reference 1655, the original Explorer 2 reference, is the unique ways in which those 24-hour hands have aged. A lot of them turned to orange. That's why the current Rolex Explorer 2s have orange hands. That's the majority. That's how the majority has aged. So that was Rolex's basically way of giving a tip of the hat to the vintage heritage, much in the way they used those Art Deco fonts in the chronograph registers of the Daytona Le Mans. Some have aged into this albino look, almost all whitened out, looking almost the same shade as the hour and minute hands. Others have aged into this kind of yellowish look, which is what the Tudor Black Bay Pro replicates. The Tudor Black Bay Pro, of course, popular GMT watch by Rolex's sister brand, is modeled after this particular reference too. So beyond being the watch that Steve McQueen never wore, it has a lot to say for itself. This is lot 3 of the dial Decadence themed timed auction by Ineichen, based in Zürich. The watch actually has a presentation box, certificates, outside packaging in addition to the watch. So it's a rather interesting lot. It's also a Mark 1, so early version with the straight hand. It's a very beautiful watch, very distinctive. Again, you know, the Explorer 2, I think, in its current iteration as well, is not a watch for everyone. It's not everybody's cup of tea. It's probably the most unusual looking still of all Rolex professional watches, of all Rolex sports watches. And it's always been that way ever since its introduction in 1971. But it is a watch, especially in this vintage version, you know immediately that guy is a watch nerd, right? You know, if someone is wearing a 1655, it's almost impossible that it's a random person, right? That's a guy you want to talk watches with. That's someone you can probably approach out of the blue and start talking about horological history. So it's kind of it's a conversation piece in so many ways. This current piece is being bid at $19,250 in US dollars. They always have a fixed price, by the way. So if anyone is willing to pony up well before August 2nd, 45,300, which I think is a very optimistic price point, by all means. The Ineichen, even though they're one of the older auction houses for watches, is in its current cast a disruptor. So they have a lot of these online sales where they do away with the buyer's premium. So what you see is what you get, whether the auction ends having gone beyond the reserve price or someone triggers the buy it now option by offering the fixed price right away. What you see is what you get. That is the price you would pay. There's no added buyer's premium. Of course, there can be local taxes, import taxes, and other dues, but no other hidden fees when it comes to that particular point. Speaking of early pieces, early versions of classic Rolex models, at lot 1, you're looking at Zenith Daytona, that first generation of Southwinding, of automatic sports chronographs by Rolex that were introduced in 1988 with caliber 4030, 4030. Built on the base of Zenith El Primero caliber 400s. Of course, the name itself says as much. That was one of the first integrated self-winding chronograph movements in the world. Rolex used it from 1988 to 2000 for reference 16520 in that modified form. And it took them into the 21st century to introduce their own chronograph movement with the caliber 4130, which in modified and updated form is still with us as the Daytona movement. This early version, our serial of the Zenith Daytona, has a couple of distinctive things about it. The floating cosmograph, where the cosmograph writing is a little removed from those 4 lines at 12 o'clock. So it kind of floats on its own, as it were. And the units per hour writing is exactly at 3 o'clock on the tachymeter bezel. So that's pretty much the tell of an early R serial Zenith Daytona, here with a black dial. The piece is currently being bid at 31,700. Again, one of the more desirable, one of the more collectible versions of the 16520. Hence, that seemingly unjustifiable premium, with the fixed price set at 67,950. But this is a very compelling package, also because of what it offers here. You get a recent service from 2023, December, in fact. Sorry, January. I was reading it the American way. And that service card is included with the package, as well as the presentation box and some other material, as well as you can see in that picture. Very pretty. And of course, as it is the case with early examples of the 5-digit Daytona, it's an all brushed bezel. The polished center links were introduced a few years into the production. It was still an all brushed bezel at the beginning of the 5 digits. Beautiful piece, currently being bid at 31,700 in US dollars at lot 1. This is an early example of the Zenith Daytona, reference 16520, with a floating Cosmograph dial and units per hour, 200 bezel for the tachymeter at 3 o'clock. We are looking at the Ineichen dial Decadence. If you want me to pay attention to any particular lots, if you want me to look at any of these watches before I close at midnight tonight, you can always send in the lot number, browse it on your own, send in the lot number with a super chat, and I would prioritize it. I will jump right in fact, and look at it with as much historical and horological detail as possible. I am going to release tomorrow or on Thursday a video on the new generation of Rolex dials, what Rolex does with their dials in recent time. So it's perhaps appropriate to talk about this particular Daytona. This is a white gold Daytona that belongs to that same generation. So it's the caliber 4030, the Zenith El Primero based movement that is the beating heart of this watch. Also, of course, this is long before Oyster Flex, so precious metal versions of the Daytona as a different option were at the time offered with a leather strap, usually an alligator strap, complementing the color of the dial, which is a blue one in this particular case. And it is a sodalite dial with the coronet at 12 o'clock, Arabic numerals for the rest of the quarters, and 8 brilliant cut diamonds for the rest of the hour markers. I think the 18 karat white gold case goes really well with, and of course it is complemented by a matching déployant clasp as well. This is basically a full set. as you can see. Presentation box, outer box, some product literature, as well as certificates. Apparently it was purchased on May 20 of 1999. So towards the end of the production cycle, basically, we did mention that this generation of Daytonas were discontinued or updated around the millennium. This is a reference 16519, white gold Daytona presented on a leather strap, and in this case with a sodalite dial, of which the blue is very complementary of the white metal of the case. And as you can see, it is a very unique blue. And that's one of the gorgeous things about these semi-precious stone dials. The wooden dials too, right? Because they are all unique cross-sections of the material. They are basically each a unique piece. Each dial has a distinctive look that is like no other. And I think that's quite a cool thing, right? As much as brands, as much as makers, manufacturers prefer the kind of stability that modern materials and processes allow them, there is something quite romantic about these stone dials, even though they are probably harder to work with and harder to stabilize as well. You know, in some examples, this is slightly more rare with Rolex, but you guys know I'm a fanboy, so it's not like, you know, I've never seen a Rolex stone dial with some cracks and some imperfections over the years. That's why they are increasingly more limited in number. That's why they prefer to keep the number of these kinds of pieces very low in our time, because rejection rates are extremely high. Finding that producing that perfect dial involves so many discontinued, rejected, and discarded dials that it's simply not worth it at a very serially produced level. This is lot number 4, again priced a little ambitiously for what it is, even though it is a beautiful watch. The starting bid, which no one has touched yet, and that's a starting bid, mind you, below the reserve price. It is $45,300 in US dollars. The fixed price, which can act as a buy it now option for lot 4, reference 16519, Rolex/Zenith Daytona in white gold with a soda dial, is right under 85,000 in US dollars. Pardon me. Now we are moving on to the last hour of the broadcast. So just to let you know, there are a few very nice examples of the yellow gold version, by the way, at lots 6, 13, and 16. And there's another white gold Daytona at lot 17, very similar in appearance and also in terms of the package that it offers to the one that we were just looking at. At lot 4, lot 17, same reference number, white gold Daytona with a sodalite dial. Again, offered with a rather compelling package of box and papers. This piece has, however, a lower starting bid and a lower fixed price. The piece is currently being bid at $26,050 in US dollars. This is lot 17, and the fixed price, the buy it now option for this, is set at $73,600. I also want to take a look, as I mentioned, at yellow gold versions. Arabic numerals on the dial. As you guys know, with the 6-digit version, those numbers will become radially arrayed, and those are mostly named racing dials. I think, for all intents and purposes, you can call this a racing dial as well, but I think that distinction should perhaps be preserved for the 6-digit era. This is something they used to do with the 5-digit precious metal pieces. This is that version of the Panda with Arabic numerals, yellow gold case, black alligator strap, matching deployant clasp in 18-karat yellow gold. These are very cool pieces, 16,518. As you can see, again, a very interesting package with a beautiful wooden old school presentation box. Seemingly in a very nice condition. This is lot 6 for the yellow gold Zenith Daytona, presented on a leather strap, reference 16,518, with Arabic numerals on the dial, a Panda dial. It's currently being bid at $16,450 with the fixed price, the buy it now option, set at $31,700. Jake Brooks, thank you so much. $19.99, number 19. I almost impulse bought one of these a few months ago. Let's take a look. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, why not? Man, the pre-Daytona chronographs are, I think, amazing. This is a very good example as well. Reference 6238. Pre-Daytona is basically a designation used by dealers, also by collectors as well, for those Rolex chronographs that have preceded the release of the Rolex Daytona. They're called the pre-Daytona because even though aesthetically they're different, they're also based on similar, on value movements of similar provenance. They're powered by value movements of a similar provenance. Here, the caliber 72B, 36 millimeters in diameter, with a smooth, slightly domed bezel, with the tachymeter inscribed on the perimeter of a silver dial with a sunburst finish, pump pushers, 3 registers with the continuous running seconds at 9 o'clock, 30 minutes totalizer at 3 o'clock, and a 12-hour counter at 9 o'clock. Very monochromatic, very beautiful, very subtle, on a matching oyster bracelet in stainless steel here. Reference 6238 pre-Daytona. Again, a beautiful package. Serviced a few years ago by Bukhara as well, which is a nice reassurance to have. The piece has a starting bid at lot 19 of 28,350. No one has bid on this watch yet. The fixed price 62,300, may serve as a buy it now option. I would say it's a better version of the movements that you find in that Navi timer. 72B is a little less industrial, a little more refined compared to the later Valjoux 7740 that powers the 7806 Navi timer. I just want to get a little more water. I am back. We have another full hour to go, by the way. I kind of like the Milgauss. Yeah. So the 6238's pretty cool piece. Honestly, JB, I would say it's not a watch that I would like to buy on an impulse. I think the pre-Daytona is really a watch that you would want to buy with the help of an expert or an established dealer of vintage watches, like someone of Eric Wynn's stature. Yeah, unless, again, you find an example that you can judge for yourself if you are at that level with your own journey, so to speak. Or, again, you find one and judge that with the help of someone who knows a little better or a little more than you do. Now to vary things up a little bit, this is the 5-digit nipple dial version of the GMT Master root beer. Sometimes they call it mocha, in 18 karat gold, tropical fire dial. I really, these are mostly imperfections, but sometimes such imperfections give the watch such a great look. It's one of those cases now. They called it a tropical fire dial. I think that's really inspiring. It does look very sexy. Very simple, vintage style strap with that double stitching at the end. I think a very compelling presentation. I like the fact that they also matched it with a gold Rolex pin buckle in 18 karat yellow gold, not plated. Of course, it would be so much better if this watch came with a full bracelet, but having a good case like that, you can see how crisp and legible those hallmarks still are, I think is already very desirable. It's not easy to match these things with period correct and supple, nice oyster or jubilee bracelets in good condition. So that's that. But otherwise, the watch looks really interesting, really good, really compelling. I think the hands, to me, look like they may be replaced, later service hands. Unfortunately, the lot essay or the condition description does not really include anything on that. But I feel the coloring of the patina of the luminous material in those nipple indices is much more of an eggshell color, whereas this is very bright and white on the hands. So I feel like those hands are changed, but you would never know. So if you're really interested, if you're really interested in a watch like this, like Lot 9 in this Ineichen Zürich Dial Decadence auction, you should really contact them directly. They specify the name of the person, Daniel Isaac, who is responsible for this particular auction. So I would write to them. I would even call them and ask questions. I'm sure they can inform you. If they can't, of course, you simply run away, run in the other direction. But this is Lot 9, reference 1675-8. The 5-digit 18 karat yellow gold version of the GMT Master root beer with a tropical dial. The starting bids is $17,000. No one has bid on the watch yet, and the fixed price, the buy it now option, is set at $39,650. If we are talking about Lot 19, JB, I'm not sure. I don't think they will. Yeah, barring an economic crisis of some sort, I don't think the 6238s are going under 20K anytime soon. I don't think so. Enough people know about them, and their numbers are actually quite limited compared to the Rolex Daytona, for example. But they're not worth as much. Go figure. You know, having the rare watch doesn't always make for a more expensive watch. Rarity is not always the ultimate price for the vintage markets. Now we have Kermit's at lot 18. As you guys know, these pieces were the 50th anniversary Submariners released in 2003 with a green aluminum bezel inserts, the reference 16610 LV, lunette verte, the green bezel referring to that insert. The collectors came to call this the Kermit. Now, the Y serials, which are 2003, and F serials, which to a large extent also still carry this flat 4 distinctive bezel, are the most prized when it comes to the 16610, the Kermit Submariners. So this is one of the more desirable versions, lot 18. The watch is currently being bid at $9,650. The buy it now option, which is set at $28,350, is, I think, again, a rather ambitious price point. I don't think it will reach that. It makes me think about a relatively high reserve price too, which may not be hit or which may not be reached, which is one of the problems with the Ineichen auctions, to be brutally honest. But hey. JB says the pre-Daytona has the Hoya vibes. Look, I mean, a lot of the original 60s hand-wound chronographs, they were, they were birds of the same feather, so to speak, right? Powered by similar movement bases, which had, of course, some reflection, some part in deciding how the faces of those watches looked as well, but they shared so many other things between them, like the dial makers, bracelet makers, so case makers. When a lot of these sources are the same, the designs that come together, of course, are really reminiscent of each other. That's why Hoya Carrera looks very similar as a design to a Rolex chronograph from the same periods, which looks very similar to a Universal Genève sports chronograph from the same periods, so on and so forth. Here's an interesting 6-digit piece in white gold, since we were looking at some interesting Daytonas. This is 116509, which means it's a piece with in white gold, but with matching white gold oyster bracelets. It has also a beautiful mother of pearl dial. Slot number 10. A Tahitian mother of pearl, so to speak. I believe they have written there meteorite subdials, but I think this is what Rolex calls gold crystal. It's kind of a particular gold alloy they use for these chronograph registers that kind of has a similar appearance or pattern, especially in this finish, to the meteorites. But I think it's simply the gold crystal that you see in the chronograph registers of the Rainbow Daytonas, for example. And you have also the 8 brilliant cut diamonds for the hour indices, except for the quarters, of course. 12 hour is the coronets, and you have Arabic numerals for the rest of those quarters as well. This beautiful white gold Daytona with a black mother of pearl dial, gem sets, happens to come, as you see, with its box and papers. It's lot 10, currently being bid at $36,250 in US dollars. The fixed price, which might serve as a buy it now option, is at $56,650. I think it's gold crystal, as I mentioned. It's like Rolex uses it in a lot of these fancy versions of the Daytona for the chronograph registers. It's like a gold alloy that is crystallized to give it that tone-on-tone camouflage kind of aesthetic. And usually they are color matched in that case to the color, to the shade of the gold of the case. That was lot 10. We are still looking at the Ineichen Zürich dial Decadence auction, which includes a lot of neo-vintage pieces. But I wanted to draw your attention to those mini Royal Oaks, which were recently released at lots 35, 36, and 37. As I mentioned, this is a testament of the perverse allocation policies of the new age luxury watch brands. AP has released these pieces, I believe, at the beginning of June, if I'm not mistaken. 23 millimeters in diameter. These pieces are offered in 3 shades of gold. Case and integrated bracelets also with a very distinctive frosted gold finish that we have spoken about earlier, associated with the name Carolina Bucci, and they each have dials that match, that are rendered in the shade of the gold. So the pink gold has kind of like a copper toned dial, the yellow gold has a champagne dial, and the white gold has a kind of gray dial. All, of course, with the tapisserie design. These pieces were initially offered at around $34,000 per piece. They're all powered by a quartz caliber 2730, 23 millimeters, 6.6 millimeters in thickness. The same rule that we were talking about, miniaturization, applies here as well. It's much harder to produce a movement, hand-wound or self-winding, that would easily fit into a diminutive case like this. So having a quartz movement is easily justified from a cost-cutting perspective, also because it is a much more feminine piece, right? That stereotype still holds, even though we have a growing community of women collectors who wear all kinds of watches and who are increasingly interested in complications, in mechanical watches of all stripes. Still, a lot of women, and really a lot of, the average person really likes having that one watch they can just strap on their wrist and go, without having to think about setting the time, without having to think about anything at all until they have to change the battery. So actually, for a watch like this, small, feminine, kind of makes sense. It's easily justifiable to have a quartz powered movement. Of course, the geek in me, the horological nerd in me, wants to see, especially in an AP Royal Oak of whatever size, I want to see a mechanical movement in it, but I understand why there isn't one in this watch. This is lot 35. It is the mini Royal Oak in frosted pink gold with salmon or copper tinted tapisserie dial. The watch is currently being bid at $55,500 US dollars. And the fixed price, which may be used as a buy it now option, is set at $79,250. Remember, again, these watches are listed and they sell at $34,000 US dollars at the point of retail. If you get the allocation, the person who got this allocation immediately turned around and is trying to turn a profit now from it on a public auction. 36 is the yellow gold version. That piece is also being bid at $55,500 at lot 36. It also has a buy it now option set right under $80,000, specifically $79,250. Gone Dog, thank you for reminding everybody to upvote. It's always nice to see your name there in the chat. Lot 37 is the white gold version of the Mini Royal Oak, again executed with this frosted finish. This piece is being bid at $49,850, and the fixed price is a little less than the other two examples, $67,950. Very interesting to see these pieces already on public auction, but it's not surprising at all. Because that's what the watch market has become. Now, since I have a little more than 30 minutes, I do want to look at some of the different pieces, even though there are so many other Daytonas. I might come back to this auction. You guys know I usually take Wednesdays off and Thursdays off. I think I'll be back on Wednesdays after this week. Thursday will be my off day. But I promise you I will have more regular live streams starting with August. I know I have been telling you that this will be the case starting May, but the transition has proven so much more difficult for me, but everything is falling into place as we speak. So I'll be with you much more frequently from now on, and August will be the month where we will turn the tide. So you are looking at a reference of the AP Royal Oak, which the collectors affectionately call the owl, because the face of the watch has a somewhat anthropomorphic appearance, but it really specifically looks like the owl. Between the day dates, subdials, and the opening for the moon phase indicator at 6 o'clock. This particular version has a white Petite Tapisserie dial. The Audemars Piguet signature has those slightly larger capital letters, complemented by the initial logo at 12 o'clock. Of course, the octagonal bezel is set in place there with the hexagonal bolts nicely aligned along the round dial. And the day date subdials are framed by those silver rings, I meant to say, that mirror the stainless steel shades of the case. And the midnight shades for the backdrop of that moon phase indicator is beautifully matched by the heat blued stainless steel day date hands too. This is a reference of the Royal Oak that is simply called actually day dates and phases of the moon. But it is otherwise known as the owl. This is the stainless steel version, case and integrated bracelets, reference 25594 ST. As mentioned, with a white dial. Complicated versions of the Royal Oak at that point in time were rendered in actually a smaller case size. So this is 36 millimeters in diameter. buyer beware. For me, that makes it actually much more compelling rather than a 41 millimeter piece. But for others, where even jumbo with its 39 millimeter case is pushing it in terms of how small or sleek it is, the 36 millimeter diameter might be actually prohibitive. This is, again, lot 15 for a Royal Oak Owl, reference 25594 in stainless steel with a white dial, white petite tapisserie dial, day date and the phases of the moon. The piece is currently being bid at $21,550 in US dollars. The fixed price, the buy it now option, is fixed at $39,650 in US dollars. Again, let's try to look at some of the different, some of the more unusual pieces presented here. As I mentioned, a lot of Rolexes, a lot of Daytonas, but there are some other compelling pieces as well. There's a 5711, of course, 3700, first released in 1976. The original Jarajanta design is iconic in its own right, but 5711, having now been discontinued, with the absence of a stainless steel Nautilus in the current catalog, with the fact that the reference 5711 was current when the hype of Nautilus was breaking, right around the time when Patek Philippe, especially with their sports watches, became mainstreamed, became much more of a mainstream brand. 5711 is one of the, if not the iconic Nautilus reference. Of course, it has the sweep center seconds hand. That's different from the original Nautilus Jumbo. And it also has an exhibition case back that is also different from the original. Makes it a little bit thicker, but that sort of exhibition case back is something that the contemporary wearers of these kinds of watches, these kinds of luxury pieces, have come to expect. This example at lot 44 is in near mint condition and does come with its box and papers from year 2018, classic kind of gradient black-blue dial with the ribbed design, currently being bid at $9,600 in US dollars, with a buy it now option fixed at $113,250 for this 5711A, the Nautilus Jumbo, in stainless steel, in the now discontinued reference. Let's look at some other Nautiluses. 5990 has also been extremely popular, combining as it does two very desirable complications for this kind of sports watch: travel time and, of course, the Southwinding chronograph with flyback functionality. This is the new stainless steel with the blue dial, 5990 line 1A-011. It's actually a watch from 2024, barely worn, near mint, with box and papers. As you can see, with the new clasp as well. Lot 43 is already being bid at $124,550 in US dollars, with a fixed price set at $169,850 for the Nautilus travel time chronograph reference 5990. There's a ladies' Nautilus. These fly a lot more off the radar, although I have to say their desirability has increased over the years, especially due to the scarcity of a lot of the male models, if I may be so presumptuous. But the dial design is different, with an Arabic numeral. The indices are different, a different handset, but the most distinctive thing is the Arabic numeral at 12 o'clock and the placement of the date window at 6 o'clock. Of course, the dial is kind of like a wavy design rather than the classic ribbed regular pattern of the Nautilus. But the case and bracelet design remains the same. Same movements, caliber 324 SC. But of course, the watch has a smaller appearance. Reference 7118 is 35.2 in case diameter, whereas the 5711 is basically 40 even. This is again an example that's near mint, box and papers at lot 45. For the ladies' version of the Nautilus in stainless steel with the blue dial. Lot 45 is currently being bid at $55,500 in US dollars. It also has a buy it now option where the price is set at $84,950. Again, we're closing on the latter parts, on the tail ends of the show. So if you would like me to highlight a watch that I didn't cover yet, or that you think I might not get to before the show closes tonight, please feel free to send in a super chat. Here's the link to the auction that we're discussing. Feel free to scroll through, find the lot. If you send in the lot number, I'll jump right in to discuss that watch above and beyond the others with as much horological and historical detail as I can muster. Here is one of the most desirable pieces in the current Rolex catalog. It's also made its appearance on a number of wrists and on the wrists of Rolex ambassadors such as Roger Federer and Carlos Alcaraz as well. This is the Yachtmaster in titanium case and bracelets. One of the most desirable pieces in the current Rolex catalog, one of the harder to get pieces, one of the hardest to get, in fact. The reference 226-627, the Yachtmaster in RLX titanium. It's been part of the conversation, part of the predictions cycle for years, ever since a prototype showed up on Sir Ben Ainsley's wrist. The final product was a little different due to the bracelets, due to the, of course, dimensions, the date window. Ainsley's came basically on a NATO strap. The prototype also didn't have a date indicator, but the final product, I think, was quite satisfactory to many. And to this day, this watch remains quite difficult to get, and also rather desirable. I know JB really likes it and kind of put it at the top of his list of priorities in terms of what he asks from his authorized dealer. It lists for $14,050 in US dollars. This example is currently being bid at $26,050 at lot 28. There's also a buy it now option at $45,300 in US dollars. I think that's quite ambitious, which makes me think that this particular bidding process might not even reach the reserve. But there we are. This is the Yachtmaster 226627 in titanium at lot 28. I wanted to change things up a little bit again before we close. We still have 20 minutes, of course, but you're looking at an IWC Big Pilot and a limited edition at that. This was a 50-piece limited run. In pink gold, the Perpetual calendar Latin America edition, 18 karat 5 and pink gold with that distinctive big onion crown. The piece lives up to its name, of course, with the 46 millimeter diameter. It is a Perpetual calendar, which is built on that Kurt Klaus module. Ingenious. Everything can be advanced and corrected in a synchronized fashion with just the help of the crown. There's also a precise moon phase indicator here located at 12 o'clock, given almost a point of prominence in the display of the watch. And there's also a 4-digit expression of the year as well at around 7:30. There's a small second subdial at 9 o'clock and a power reserve indicator at 3 o'clock. The power reserve indicator is encircled by a pointer date, and there's an indication for the weekday around the small second subdial. And at 6 o'clock, counterposed to the moon phase indicator, there's an indicator for the month. The watch has Arabic numerals and generous amounts of luminous material on the dial, as well as the hands befitting of this sort of pilot watch. Big pilots, 46 millimeters in diameter in 18 karat pink gold. This piece is from 2016 out of number 49 of a 50-piece limited edition on a black leather strap with a matching deployant clasp. Here's a look at that self-winding movement that powers this big pilot perpetual calendar. This is lot 24 for the IWC Big Pilot Latin America Limited Edition, number 49 out of 50. The piece is currently being bid at $17,000 in US dollars. The buy it now option is set as at twice as that. That was lot 24. I think in the time that remains, I will ask you to hit the like button. If you want to support the channel, if you want to show some love, feel free to do so in the remaining 15 minutes or so. If you want to ask questions, there's time for that still. And if you want to support this stream in other ways, of course, you can drop, take a look at the video description and use the links there. Lot 39 is a Royal Oak Perpetual calendar, again in pink gold. This is a reference 26-252, a 39 millimeter pink gold case. The watch is in near mint condition, but from year 2009, with a kind of white dial, a silver dial, you might say, right? You know, it's not pure white. The self-winding movements, which is, of course, built on the base of that ultra-thin tractor movement JLC 920 base called caliber 2120/2802 in this particular version. I really like the oscillating weights. It has a supplemental 21 karat gold components, but the rest of it is open worked in a way that integrates both elements of the octagonal bezel design, some hand engraving, as well as, again, a skeletonization that puts into sharp relief the initials of the last names for the two founding families, Audemars and Piguet. A very cool watch, old school, 39 millimeter pink gold case, presented on a leather strap. This is lot 39, which has not yet attracted any bids, but the starting bid would be $56,650, which is a little bit elevated. Perhaps that's the reason why it hasn't attracted any bids with only 2 days to go. The buy it now option is fixed at $96,250 in US dollars. There are some very interesting and different pieces, but I'm gonna keep a little bit of the same theme, maybe reach out for another two different watches. We're looking at, again, an earlier iteration of the Royal Oak Chronograph, where the case is 39 millimeters in diameter. This, of course, has caliber AP 2385, which is built on the base of Frédéric Piguet 1185, quite a generic Southwinding movements that a lot of boutique watchmakers used at the time, including AP and Vacheron Constantin. This is reference 26022 in yellow gold, again with that silvered white Grand Tapisserie dial with hour markers that kind of mirror the pattern of that dial. There's a date window at 4:30, a 30-minute totalizer at 3 o'clock, a 12-hour counter at 9 o'clock, and continuous running seconds at 6. Really balanced and beautiful dial, yellow gold on brown alligator strap with contrast stitching. Very cool aesthetic, which kind of reminds me of my own watch, which is, of course, just a time and date piece with a military dial, but that complementary presentation of the yellow gold and the brown leather strap with contrast stitching is very similar. This is reference 26022 for the Royal Oak Chronograph at lot 38. The piece is currently being bid at 29,450. Again, the bidding will close on August 2nd for this piece, and the buy it now option is set at $50,950. Am I Latin American? I don't know. I don't really talk about my background, my national background, my country of origin. I'm Jewish, that's the only thing that really matters to me. That's the only thing that has mattered to me and mostly to others whom I met in this life, for better or worse. I can speak some Spanish if that helps. Historically, there's very interesting things to explore. Of course, when you think of not only limited and special editions for Latin America, but all these historic jewelers, based in different parts of the continent. Of course, Serpico y Laino comes to mind. Enrique Tefer is another one, both based in Caracas. Of course, Gondolo y Laborio from Rio de Janeiro. There are many illustrious jewelers which have provided their signatures or their stamps on the dials as well. I'm blanking out on this classic Argentine one for one reason or another. It's a Teutonic name, actually. It's a German name. I'm sure Freud would have a lot to say about why I forget the name of the German-Italian sorry, German, Argentine signature on the dial. Okay, I will cheat and look and try to find what it was. This is gonna drive me crazy. Okay, I can't remember. I cannot remember. I want to say maybe like Wald, something like that. Walser Wald, maybe. I think it was Walser Wald. Yeah, anyway, sorry for that confusion, or the last minute kind of. Lot 51 can put us back on track. And we do have two more watches left. Let's say we talked a lot about the use of the Zenit El Primero caliber 400 as a base for the automatic chronograph for the Southwinding Daytona between years of 1988 to 2000 by Rolex in the reference 16520. Daniel Roth with the more serially produced, the more industrial version of his chronographs was another. Of course, the initial models were hand-wound pieces, building on the base of the Lemania CH27. The self-winding pieces that were introduced with the acquisition of Hourglass of the Daniel Roth brand run on the Zenit El Primero caliber 400, such as this beautiful number with the blue dial. Here is the Zenit movement from the back. Beautiful Yves Klein blue on the dial. The classic double ellipse case design. Self-winding chronograph with an hour counter and a date. Roman numerals. Vertical pinstripe guilloche dial. A little bit of luminous material on the tip of those arrow hands, as well as behind those Roman numerals for the hour markers. This is lot 51 for the Daniel Roth Masters chronograph, built on the Zenit El Primero caliber 400, here DR 400, from around year 2000. Apparently this example is provided with its box and papers, and it is seemingly in a very well preserved condition as well. This is lot 51. It's currently being bid at 9,650. and has, again, a somewhat inflated buy it now option set at 18,150. Yeah, I really, really like this case shape, as you guys know. It's very unique and very aesthetically pleasing in terms of how the mid case is protruding and how the lugs attach themselves to that double ellipse shape. I think I have time for one or two more watches. Let's see, unless you have any special requests, any last minute questions, which you should feel free to ask. Feel free to send in before closing. I think I will do two more. And I'm going to do Laurent Ferrier and Urban Jürgensen. Let's go to lot 59. This is a Big 8 Japan edition. As you guys know, Urban Jürgensen has recently been acquired by a consortium led by Kari Voutilainen, who has a lot to do with the modern existence of the brand and has borrowed himself quite a lot in terms of the appearance of the watches, to which he contributed as a design anyways. Big 8 is their classic dress watch, time only. This is a Japan edition. I think it's one of 20, 40 millimeters in stainless steel with those beautiful teardrop lugs. A kind of Grenet dial, like a subtly textured off-white dial, complemented beautifully with applied pink gold toned Breguet numerals, which play off nicely with the details of those observatory style hands, which are partly in pink gold, partly in heat blued stainless steel. And there's also an oversized subdial for small seconds at 6 o'clock. Oh, thank you. Thank you for being here. I think it's a 2016 limited edition of the Big Pilot Perpetual calendar, 50 pieces in pink gold. That was the IWC Big Pilots that we were talking about earlier. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was lot 24, if memory serves, but feel free to go back there. This is lot 58 for a beautiful time-only stainless steel Urban Jürgensen piece, Big 8. Kari Voutilainen and his team are in the process of reviving the brand, but the prices have been on the uptick already. 40 millimeters in stainless steel, Breguet numerals, hand-wound movements, observatory hands, very distinguished and beautiful design with those stunning teardrop lugs. Remember, I like to say they call them teardrop lugs because they bring tears to your eyes. Of course, it has nothing to do with the truth, but it sounds good, and they are indeed beautiful. And look at that. Beautiful, beautiful Southwinding movements with a 21 karat oscillating weight that has a stunning guilloche decoration with a barley corn motif. Lot 58 is currently being bid at $23,800 in US dollars. The buy it now option is fixed at $45,300. The very last watch I will discuss today, please hit the like button if you are on your way out. Feel free to share the link with others so we can expand this community, so we can take this channel to the next step together as a community of watch enthusiasts who come around, who come together through the passion for and knowledge of wristwatches. And if you want to support the channel, of course, you can always click at one of those links in the video description, beyond all the different ways that YouTube allows you to do. Of course, if you sign up for the membership, and the members in the chat can tell you that, you'll gain access to a lot of exclusive content. These are discrete videos that are focused on models, designs, complications, and through the history of those models, they also give you pointers about the watch market today and how you can perhaps find some interesting deals on those watches in the current market. Now you're looking at one of my favorite versions of the Laurent Ferrier watch. I really like the square, and I'm also a big fan of their micro-rotor movements. Laurent Ferrier, of course, was head of the design department at Patek Philippe for a very long time. He has also otherwise spent a lot of time with them, trained as a watchmaker as well. Very interesting career. If you want to learn more about Laurent Ferrier, feel free to check out some of the information that he provides on the website. If you have a request for me to make a video on it, perhaps, you can, I'm sure you can convince me easily with a nice super chat or PayPal. But beyond that, we're looking at 61, which is the square-shaped case. I like to think of these as a very elegant and contemporary iteration of those initial cushion-shaped or square-shaped Rolex Oyster cases that were provided to Panerai to make their distinctive dive watches. This is their micro-rotor movement, which is beautifully decorated and has a natural escapement that takes its inspiration from Breguet's design. The rotor bridge is very elegant, sleek, and hand-finished. The micro rotor itself has a beautiful decoration that has this sort of snail effect. I really like also the architecture of the movement too. There you go, take a look at that. This is a very recent limited edition of some sorts called Evergreen. From this year, actually. A full package, again, in near mint condition, barely worn. I think it's a very elegant watch. Lovely green dial, very complementary to the stainless steel cushion-shaped case, 41 millimeters in diameter, has very nicely rounded, almost organically shaped presence as well, a distinctive onion crown, and the Assegai handset, which kind of is designed as kind of a spear-shaped form, arrow-shaped applied indices as well, and seconds, small seconds on a subdial at 6 o'clock. This piece has not yet attracted any offers because it's very expensively priced. I know it's a recent piece, new piece, limited edition and whatever, but you can find these square micro rotor pieces for much, much less than the starting bid of this particular piece at lot 61. The starting bid is $54,350 in US dollars. The fixed price, which may be triggered as a buy it now option at any time before the end of the auction, before the closing on August 2nd, a couple of days away still, is set at $73,600. Now, I will try to return to this auction before it ends, but if I don't, check it out. It's called Dial Decadence, put together as a timed and themed auction by Ineichen Zürich. They have a lot of things, I guess, that make them more or less successful among the current generation of auctioneers. They're one of the oldest. I like these online auctions they put together, mostly because they eliminate buyer's premium, but a lot of times these pieces are consigned to them, and with very high reserve prices, sometimes above the trending value in the markets, that really takes away from the success of a lot of their sales. I think they're doing some injustice, I should say, to themselves by that. But otherwise, they have a lot to offer. So check it out. I'll try to cover some of the other watches if I return before the end of the auction, but I hope I gave you enough variety tonight. If you have liked the video, if you have learned something from it, please feel free to hit the like button. You guys have participated really nicely in the chat, but after the live stream ends, if you can add a few comments, that always helps. That pushes the video forward. The likes, the comments get a small channel like this very far. So please do that. Share the links to my videos, to the channel, to the live streams with your friends, with fellow watch collectors, and help me reach 5,000 members. Help me double up my subscribers in quick succession. Honestly, I don't expect it before the end of the year, but I know only you can help me get there. If you want to support the channel, you know how. I will see you in the next one. I'm going to post a video on Rolex's new approach to different dial varieties tomorrow or on Thursday, by Thursday latest. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Stay tuned for that. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, wear and enjoy your pieces. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.